Hey everybody, Wednesday, ta-da, new kind of temporary setup. I haven't been able to push this chair far enough so that you don't see the junk, but, oh, that's worse. But you see the cat thing in the back, so there is the potential for cats still walking around in the background. But I think this kind of looks more deliberate. I'm still going to tweak it. I might put in another display case or something like that. I don't know. I'm still getting used to the space, but I think this actually looks better than what was here before. What was here before is too much empty wall for my liking. It looked blah. So, like I said, I'm still working on it, but we're getting there. Yay. I was going to do the second video in my free speech series video on free speech pioneering in Athens, Greece, in ancient Athens. But this Gillette ad controversy blew up my social media. So I wanted to touch on it. So I'm going to do the free speech thing tomorrow. Public content on Thursdays for a change. Patrons will still get their own Patreon-specific video. And if you want to see those videos, or if you just want to support my content, because Gillette will probably demonetize this, but help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. This support, or there's a one-time PayPal, there's an email address you can send via PayPal in the description box of this video. But patrons really helpful because YouTube's demonetization practices are impossible to figure out. So this will probably get demonetized because it's about gender, and that's about the fastest way to get demonetized on YouTube nowadays. But I think it's important. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the last minute of the ad first. And then I'm going to go back and show you the complete thing with the first 48 seconds. And the first 48 seconds is other than two lines that end up in the last minute. I think it's the first 48 seconds that are actually causing people to freak out. And I want to talk about why. But let's show, again, it's going to be the last minute, and then I'm going to show the whole ad unless I get bored watching the second. But okay, here we go. Here's the last minute, which again, other than two lines about the right thing to say or the right way to act that I take issue with, and I'll tell you why. I think this on its own is okay. Here we go.
Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie. Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool, not cool.
Some already are. In ways big and small.
I am strong.
Come on, that's just adorable. Notice
But some
it's the ginger kid
is
getting
not
beat
enough.
up.
It's not how we treat each other, okay? Okay.
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
So affirming, right? Like on its own. Here we go. So I'm going to re-rack this now and let you see the beginning, the part that's causing everyone to freak out. Now, this may be upsetting. Trigger warning. For real. I'll explain why after we watch. Here we go.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual
Toxic
harassment.
masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get?
Mortal Kombat!
It's likely happening here in Bullying as well. A problem.
We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
Another
What
lining
I
of ginger.
actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But
Because this
something
ever
finally
happens.
changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual
This
harassment.
is a very important part. That scene right there, and I'll tell you why later.
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
And this is the beginning of the part I showed you.
Men accountable.
Less feel good with that thing off the top.
To say
isn't
the
it?
right thing. To act the right way.
And I don't know why they're harassing a Taylor
Some
Swift
already
cosplayer,
are.
but say la vie.
In ways big and
I personally
small.
love that part and this part. I think it's adorable. Ginger kid's still getting
But
beat up.
some is not enough.
His dad is gingerphobic.
That's not how we treat each other, okay? Okay.
That was a joke.
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
Now, remember I said there's one part in this. Oh, let's just see the thing that I cut it off before because it's really not. This, thebestmencanbe.org, that is the website I'm pulling this off of. It's actually
The Me Too
whoop,
movement
come on,
against-
stop. Okay. It's actually it's a campaign for Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which is a great organization that I think should get more support. But that thing I said that this is super important, I'll go back to it. I'll freeze frame on it so I can explain why I think it's super important. Right here. The fact that they chose, what's her name? Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks for this ad. This was a great big ding, 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 ding about what I think they're doing here. What I think this ad is designed to do is win back some millennial young men who turn to things like Dollar Shave Club and things like that, which are very, very social justice-y brands. A friend of mine, and I'm not going to say who because I don't know if I can talk about this. He has, but I'm not going to talk about it. A buddy of mine got his Dollar Shave Club advertising pulled because he criticized Anita Sarkeesian. They are very social justice-y. And it's like to attract millennial young men, you have to not just care, but care in a really obnoxious chest beating, like why you would choose the Young Turks to talk about men being better. I mean, Cenk Uygur is one of the most ironic examples of so-called toxic masculinity. I used to watch the Young Turks all the time. One of the things I got sick of was everybody having to agree with Cenk cutting Anna off constantly. It seemed the only thing that they'd let Anna talk at length about without other people jumping in and interrupting her was her nose job. They talk over Anna all the time. She's a glorified weather girl on that service. Cenk is a blowhard that, has his own past, present. Like, I go back every so often. It's like, no, he's still a jerk. And it is still a boys club with Anna. They keep trying to get other women in, but the Young Turks is a boys club. I'm sorry. It's loud and it's obnoxious and it's all the things that this campaign is like trying to encourage men away from. It's the left just trying to be louder than the talking heads on the right. And, once I discovered David Pakman, I stopped watching the Young Turks because it's the same sort of slant on news. Without David Pakman doesn't yell and he doesn't pound the table and he has strong opinions, but he doesn't have to be a raving jerk about it. And the reason I with a straight face said trigger warning for that ad is that, first of all, that bullying thing, I think a lot of people as boys, probably if you're about 10 years younger than me can relate to that. And that's seen as like a girl's issue, that sort of relational aggression with the nasty grams over text or messenger. A lot of boys are suffering in silence about that stuff because they're expected to suck it up. So I'm glad they addressed that. But that whole line of guys with their arms folded at a giant like extended barbecue kick line going, boys will be boys. That, I don't remember the last time I heard boys will be boys, and that might just be because of the circles I travel in, but that's about 10 years old as in terms of sentiments. Like, even when my my nephew, who's now in his 20s, was 10, my stepsister and her husband weren't pulling the boys will be boys. They were really tough on him. I did like the way they discourage boys from being violent, not fighting, not roughhousing, but actually beating up that poor ginger kid. I liked all that stuff. But that front half where they made dehumanization tactics, and they showed cartoons from like the 1940s and old honeymooner style sitcoms, 80s style sitcoms. Like, can we please get stuff today? Like, this just seems to me to be wedging, because the first rule of advertising used to be offend no one. That's impossible now. So it's almost like, because Gillette's last campaign was that Made in America sort of thing. They made a campaign almost for Trump voters, and it's almost like they're like, wow, we alienated too many lefty millennials with that. Now we're going to spit on those guys that responded to our Made in America campaign and go after the Dollar Shave Club crowd, hoping to God that it's not going to change those older buyers' patterns. The risk these ads seem to be taking is that once you hit a certain age, I can't off the top of my mind remember what the cutoff is, but my age, you're less influenced by advertising. So you're very unlikely to change things like what razor you buy, what laundry soap you buy, what stuff like that. Those are locked in, usually because women are influencers in a household and they buy it. So a secondary target for these ads is women. They're really trying to grab that potentially still persuadable younger male, which used to be the sweet spot for all programming because that's the demographic advertisers want. Personally, I don't think it's necessarily true. I have changed things, like I've tried Dove shampoo, which wasn't even around when my purchasing decisions. It was Pantene Pro-V back then. That's, aging myself. But Dove shampoo, things like Tide Pods, all these things, they've changed. Now, granted, I'm not a man. I am that typical female head of household influencer person, so maybe I'm speaking out my ass, but it's true that household products, like razors, it tends to be purchased by the woman in the family because the woman does the shopping more often than not. But yeah, that using Anna Kasparian, that was a big signal for me, and I think it's going to backfire precisely because the guys in that age demographic are really not the problem in terms of that boys will be boys attitude. You guys, I know a lot of you watch. You don't say those sorts of things because you don't see yourself as typical men. You're gamers, so you don't see that boys will be boys thing. And it's that vilifying masculinity, that treating existing masculinity is something that is inherently evil, triggers a lot of guys in a way we should understand, because all of that, smacking the secretary's ass, wolf whistle behavior, the reason that's bad is it's treating femininity, it's treating being a woman as an inherently devalued state. And that's what this ad is doing to masculinity right now. The assumption that everybody needs to do better is a big one. It's still an aspirational campaign instead of affirmational, and advertising for women is all affirmational right now. The big shift was the beginning of affirmational versus aspirational marketing. Aspirational is be young, have fun, drink Pepsi, do this and you will be good. The big turning point in marketing was the Clairol ad, because you're worth it. That's affirmational. You're good enough just as you are. Buy this. And this is the best a man can get, is an aspirational campaign. And what this whole ad is basically implying is, hey guys, you're not good enough as you are. And what they miss is that men get these signals a lot these days. Yeah, I think that's where this misses the mark. And unfortunately, I think some people will drop. See, I'm not sure, because I don't know. I buy Gillette razors. I buy the Mach 3 brand and I buy the Venus brand, and I go back and forth. They're good razors. I mean, I don't give a crap about their advertising. They're good razors. That's all I care about. I guess people who do the online stuff, but I mean, where are you going to go? Dollar Shave Club? They're just as bad. So they're really leveraging sort of a captive audience here of, this is something people actually need, and there's nowhere for them to go if they don't like this kind of marketing. But I do think we do have to discuss what these constant running down of guys is doing to men and boys. I mean, let's face it, this is the marketing equivalent of that scene where that kid was pummeling the ginger kid, like, over and over and over again. We have identified men as the problem who are not the problem. That is nerds. Did you notice the whole pack of angry nerds? It was all white kids. They were really hesitant to show black men as any sort of problem. The white guy in the boardroom. I did think that whole thing of the mansplaining moment. They had one black dad in the barbecue thing, but I'm trying to find that Mortal Kombat where I yelled Mortal Kombat. Here it is. I'll switch over again. Look at how many white faces are here. So he's walking with the boys. Look, they're all white kids. There's black kids
and small.
But the angry pack of bullies, all white kids. They are clearly leveraging white male liberal guilt here. And for a kid who was that ginger kid being beat up on, or that little scrawny kid that all the other kids were chasing, they're white kids too. And they were the ones who were picked on. And these are the people who these bludgeoning messages, which are in and of itself the very assumption that you got to hit men over the head with a hammer to get them to understand anything, offshoot of toxic masculinity. That I'm saying toxic masculinity is, that's what they call it. Please don't jump all over me. But this idea that you got to bash guys' brains in to get them to understand anything, that's supposed to be the type of unhealthy hyper masculinity, strong, attitudes that this ad is trying to combat. And the ad itself wallows in it for the first 48 seconds. That's the problem with the first 48 seconds, is that it's not showing the subtleties of how it happens in real life. It's showing a cartoonish parody of bullying, masculine bullying. That's what I'll say. I'm not going to say it's conventional masculinity. And here's why. Okay, we talked a lot about traditional masculinity. Traditional masculinity, that is the type of masculinity that instilled the stoic masculinity that instilled itself during, World War I and World War II, because they happened very closely together, was hinged on selflessness and service and keep calm and carry on. That sort of traditional masculinity looks like Pip-Boy, the Fallout guy back there, the cartoony vault dweller, the classic Superman, the clean-cut superhero. This roided out anti-hero type character is not traditional masculinity. That was a backlash to the 1970s sensitive male liberal when the U.S. left Vietnam without winning the war. Some people get very upset if you say the U.S. lost Vietnam, but they didn't win. And that had an interesting domino effect on media. That led to the rise of what we now call beefcake cinema, specifically out of the Rambo films. But you got any movie that Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Charles Bronson, Chuck Norris, into the 90s with Jean-Claude Van Damme. That is beefcake cinema. It's hyper masculine. And other than Rocky is like a really good guy, Rocky is probably the only beefcake cinema where he is still sort of that traditional, caring in his own way, but stoic, doesn't talk about his feelings kind of guy. But he is not a bully. He is not, yes, boxing is violent, but the thing that's kind of amazing about Rocky is how kind of sensitive and sweet he is. And that, to me, is more traditional masculinity in the line of classic Superman or Captain America now. The Marvel movie version of Captain America played by Chris Evans. That is traditional masculinity. The 1980s form of masculinity that is misidentified as traditional masculinity is the anti-hero type of character, like John Rambo, like the Terminator, like, that was a response to not only attempting to get a moral victory out of Vietnam because there wasn't a military one, and the, kind of a backlash. The whole 80s was a backlash to the particular kind of androgyny, the feminizing kind of androgyny, long hair on men and bell-bottom jeans on everybody. The androgyny of the 1980s became short hair on women. It became, unisex hair was short. So it was more on the masculine end of things, androgynous or unisex looks, as opposed to the feminine side of things. It was an answer back. And that's where we got the big hulking brutes with the big hulking muscles, and, everybody looks like a Rob Liefeld drawing, and so on and so forth. That's not traditional masculinity. That's 80s anti-hero masculinity. But that has become what we see as traditional masculinity, and it's not. It's not. Chris Evans' Captain America is traditional masculinity, which is, hey kids, stay in school, masculinity with a smile. And because our terms are all jumbled up, and because they've all kind of collapsed in the pseudo-intellectual popular zeitgeist, too many guys don't know the right thing to say and the right way to act. And that is my issue with that line. There is no single correct way to act. All women are not a monolith. All women do not want the same things. The ad itself is being sexist. That whole thing where they compare the sexual objectification of guys slapping women's asses to everybody acting like a drunken yahoo at a party. They show that guy going, the party stupid, the drunk stupid, and the girl bouncing up and down, and she's very clean cut, but as far as we all know, she's there consensually. That's perpetuating that idea that any woman who just has fun at a party is acting like a slut. Shame on you, Gillette. Do not collapse those two things. Women are allowed to be seen. We're allowed to go out in public. We're allowed to party. and partying with women when everybody has their clothes on and you're just jumping up and down and dancing, nothing wrong with that. That's actually quite healthy. So shame on you for that image. And the thing is, what's the right thing to say to one woman is absolutely the wrong thing to say to another woman. And that boardroom scene is a shining example of that. Because I know I personally can't stand it when someone jumps in, and I have had that happen and it drives me fucking crazy that I'll just get my thought out and then a guy helpfully jumps in. What she's really trying to say is, and my thought is, excuse me, what I was really trying to say is what I just said. And if anybody has any questions about what I just said, they can ask me. But you sit there and you shut up because, oh, then you're being difficult to deal with. But another woman in a similar situation, if there was sort of awkward and no one asked and someone didn't jump in and do that, would be, why didn't you defend me? Why didn't you back me up? There's no winning. I mean, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. Teams should ask if they're confused with something, and no one should have to say something perfectly the right way. I agree that crap has to stop. But I have seen some women get upset when somebody didn't leap to someone's defense in a setting like that. They didn't back them up. And so guys get very confused because we really don't, woman to woman, have any agreement because we're individuals and we want different things. And, the problem with people jumping in and saying what she's really trying to say is women never get better at expressing ourselves and asserting ourselves because there is this expectation that our voice doesn't mean anything unless there's some man in the boardroom advocating for us, and that's something that drives me fucking crazy too. But getting back to this idea that there's a right way or a wrong way to act as a man, that there are multiple ways to be a proper man. That is something that men used to have that women didn't. And I think it's interesting that in service of gender equality, instead of opening up the possibilities of what, being an acceptable woman is, we're now losing ways to be an acceptable man. There is no one right way to man. There is no one right way to woman. And we should not be making those masculine and feminine definitions more narrow. We should be broadening them. I noticed the ad doesn't say what is the right way to act or the right thing to say, because often there is no right or wrong, and that's a terrible message to send men. Respectful thing to say, respectful way to act. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Polite, respectful. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. That traditional way. And you see the terminology problem we're getting into. Now, I will say that as much as I think the ad blew it, because it is a controversy and who knows how many people are just like, I'm not going to buy razors anymore. I don't think many, but for the reasons I explained. But I will say that Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada, of America, it's not Canada, it's Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada right here. The reason I keep messing that up is because I've worked with them. But they are an excellent service because they provide direct group mentoring to young men and women, and there is absolutely no substitute for that. So if you don't like what Gillette's doing with this ad, but you do still want to support Boys and Girls Club, please, I'm sure they'd appreciate a couple bucks, or if you want to go or volunteer your time or something like that. It is a really, really worthy organization that provides much needed role models to kids that very much need them. And that is really the only way. A commercial isn't going to give young people, the men of tomorrow, the women of tomorrow, that support. The only way it can be done is through direct mentorship. So that's my thought on the Gillette ad. Thanks for watching. Sorry, guys. This has been a really rough period. If you feel beat up, I totally understand why. Thanks for watching. Feedback Friday is going to be a doozy this week. Wow. Okay.